I would like to thank Solidarity and People Before Profit for bringing forward this really important motion before the House. And while it might contain a couple of things that we have differences on, the vast majority of it I wholeheartedly support. And the first one in terms of removing the barriers that are there, Minister. Now, Minister, when I hear you talking, I hear you talking and I hear students talking and I hear tutors within colleges talking, and it just doesn't add up for me. And the first thing, I suppose, in terms of removing the barriers, and I know that you agree that we have to remove the barriers that there are to education and that you realise that they are there. The first one being the fees. The fees that are charged. And I know you'd say that those who are entitled to SUSI don't pay fees and all of that. But we are the highest, we charge the highest fees in the EU, and we cannot stand over that. And governments cannot continue to stand over it. In terms of our international fees, enormous fees again charged there. Our postgraduate fees that are charged. Our graduates, our medicine graduates, as I spoke about yesterday, as one young man outlined to me, that he would have to end up paying €100,000 to be a doctor. Now, we're a country that's crying out for doctors. We go around the world looking for doctors, and yet we don't invest in our own in the way that we need to. We desperately need more clinicians. You outlined some of them yourself there. And we need to recognise, we need to join the dots. So we need to make sure that we are investing. We're not looking at the cost of education. We need to be looking at the opportunity cost if we don't invest money where we need to in education and in third level education. And I know we spoke about Donnacha O'Malley back in the 60s and commended what he did, certainly. But we know for any jobs now that are needed, or very many jobs that are needed, we need third level and we need further education in order for people to be able to access that type of employment or the type of enterprises that we need in this country. And I know that you are well intended, but you know what will really show us and show students and student population if your intentions are genuine. And even if we take the USI legislation around accommodation, we know that students have been fleeced in the last year, and really hard-pressed families, some of them single-parent families, families who are really struggling. And it is just unforgivable the way that they have had to pay over money for something that then we said, no, you cannot use that. It's like going into a shop and saying, right, pay over your money and leave the shop and you can't bring it with you. It is so, so wrong on so many levels. And the way that you can show that you are genuine about addressing that problem is that you can support the USI legislation that is being brought forward, that I introduced into this House, but that 58 TDs have already signed. And we need to do that quickly. We need to make sure that students aren't starting their education again in September and October, finding themselves in the same situation there, where renters are exploited. Just because they are students doesn't mean that they can be fleeced. And I know if we weren't in a pandemic year, and if the restrictions weren't on students, we know that they would be outside the gates of Leinster House. And I thank them for not doing that. And I thank the Students' Union for the Trojan work, unions across the country, for the Trojan work they have done throughout the year in trying to protect and to defend the rights of students in what they have been doing. We spoke again yesterday. You see, we paint a picture that everything is okay, but it's so far from okay. When I told you that 90% of students have told us that they are suffering from stress, from loneliness, from isolation, and that they are feeling disconnected. And I know it was referred to earlier on about us, this human capital that we produce. But we have to look at education and we have to address things in a holistic manner. And we have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity. And you have the privilege of being the Minister in the first Department of Higher Education. And you will be judged on that, Minister. And I really hope that you are judged kindly, and you're judged because of the things that you do. Not of the reports that you do or anything, but the things that you really make happen for students and for their families to address the inequalities that are there. Because if we continue on with an education system that feeds into inequality, everybody pays the price. Everybody pays the price, and that's why we have to make sure that we have an education system that is treated as a public good, that is treated in a way that we invest in it, that we ensure equality, that we ensure integrity within the system, that we expand access in what you've said in terms of SUSI, and we know that the thresholds of SUSI are way too restrictive as well. I want to focus, Minister, because I didn't get an opportunity yesterday around apprentices, and I think Minister Collins is here. But apprentices, and I welcome the strategy that you're doing for apprentices and bringing them onto the CAO point system and all of that into the one portal. But there are immediate problems here in apprenticeships, and we have to address it because apprentices have been left in limbo by government. 6,928 apprentices are currently waiting to access their off-the-job training. That's more than a third of all the apprentices. They have seen their practicals and their exams continuously put to one side with no end in sight. There are real problems there. The first thing we need to do is we need to engage with them, and we need to show them the pathway of their training. Most apprenticeships last 4 years. We cannot have apprenticeships lasting 6 years and people not having the qualifications that they need and not being able to earn the income that they need to as well. So it needs to be taken in hand. Whatever about the strategy for the future, and I know that government have missed targets around apprenticeships and all that, and they have been even very modest targets that have been missed, but we need to deal with the here and now in relation to apprenticeships, and Solace really need to engage as well with them and to engage with the employers there to make sure that that those things are addressed as well. We also need to address the situation around the student teachers, in terms of the Gaeltacht courses there, and the grant aid not being extended to the ones that we have pushed into getting their qualifications in the private colleges. But in terms of the Gaeltacht thing there, that grant needs to be extended. There are many more things I could talk to you about in education, but I realise I've run out of time now, haven't I, Laskin?
I have indeed.
So I'll pass over to my colleagues, but I think you get my drift.
Who's next?